that is quite the span. So we've got all the way from 18 to, it sounds like,
to
5.
4, almost 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So you've essentially covered every section of
yeah.
school.
We have preschool, elementary, middle, and high school all right now. So I mean, next year we'll have college to kindergarten. So it's pretty busy.
Yeah. So you got to tell me, where does the boy fall in?
He's number 5 of the 6, and he just turned 6 not too long ago. So he's definitely all boy. It's a lot of fun. For me, I've gotten into golf, now that I'm older, a lot of my clients play. And so I've put him in golf lessons at Top Golf, which he loves, and, loves basketball. I love basketball as well. I still play. And so it's fun, like, to have those hobbies where he does gravitate towards that a little bit more. And it's a good outlet, from his sisters that take good care of him, but sometimes he needs that dad time, so.
I was just going to ask, do the sisters just dote on him?
Yeah, they're so great with them. They're like the sweetest sisters he could have. I mean, for a little brother to have 4 older sisters are tremendously sweet, especially the older ones in high school and stuff. I mean, they're just so good to him, but it's good for him to, like, he's around all the fun girl stuff at home, and it's good when dad gets home and gets to wrestle with him a little bit. So
Yeah. So my wife is actually one of 6 girls.
Oh, wow.
And 1 boy in their family, and the boy falls smack dab in the, or no, actually not smack dab in the middle. There's 4 girls, then him, and then 2 more girls.
Yeah.
And my wife is the youngest, but it was interesting. So I'm sure that when he was younger, the older sisters were really good about, kind of taking care of him. But I've heard stories now. So my wife and I have been married almost 25 years. And I've heard stories about when he was getting into the teenage years that his older sisters were pretty rough on him to try to make sure that he wasn't, the way that she put it, this is her older sister that's kind of, no filter, says whatever she wants. She didn't want him to grow up and be a girly man, right? And so she would beat on him to make sure that he wasn't a feminine man, if you will, which today is, of course, not politically correct, but
Right.
that was what his life was like.
Oh, that's amazing. Did they grow up here as well?
Southern California, Orange County.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I actually grew up in Provo, Utah. So
Okay.
I'm a lifelong BYU fan. I got my MBA at BYU.
Okay.
And, I did my undergrad at Cal State Fullerton. So
Good school.
very, very well versed in Southern California as well.
Oh, yeah. Right by Disneyland, good baseball school there at Cal State. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to tell you that I was good enough to play baseball for Cal State Fullerton. I grew up playing baseball. I love it. I would say that I'm an average baseball player, but definitely not good enough to play for a championship team at Cal State Fullerton.
Oh, yeah.
So Brad, you grew up in the San Diego, Coronado area and whatnot. What brought you out to the Scottsdale area?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I going back to, coming out of school at a very good time in the economy, right? There were a lot of offers. I just did not do well in the cold. I mean, Utah for me, which is pretty mild, I guess, considering, winter climate. And it was too cold for me coming from San Diego. I definitely had no interest going, to Midwest or Northeast. And so I was really looking at warmer climates, Texas, Las Vegas, Arizona, California, and Florida were really what I was targeting, good growth areas. And, I kind of danced between commercial and residential. I wasn't sure which direction to go out of college, even though the programs catered to commercial. And it just, there was a fit here in Arizona that just, it was close to home, cost of living in Southern California, even at that time. I mean, now it's just crazy. But back then it was just really hard to be, young father. I had my oldest daughter who's now graduated. I mean, she was born when I was in college there. So just trying to get through that whole, next stage of life, Arizona was just a great fit, and super grateful I made that decision because it's what had to happen. So
yeah. So you guys moved here in, what was it,
2005?
2005?
Yeah, August of 2005. I finished my summer term and then moved here that summer.
Yeah. So we moved here in the summer too, which, is good and bad. I
Yeah.
mean, I think you get the shock over with,
Yeah.
but when you arrive,
it's a little breathtaking, It's like someone opened the oven, but
yeah. We arrived on, I believe it was July 7th.
oh
And,
yeah, that's the worst
I
time.
mean, we got here at like 8:00 at night, and it was hotter then than it had been that
Right.
morning, or during the hottest part of the day in Utah we were moving from as well. And trying to find somebody to help you unload your truck, which wasn't,
Little tough.
I mean, everybody's out of the state in July, if at all possible. So it was a little rough. So, well, let's talk about a finer touch. I mean, tell us So you dance between commercial and residential. You list as, commercial and residential, but do you do mostly residential now, mostly commercial? What does it look like?
Oh, that's a really good question. That pivot's changed a little bit, and I think this really goes into the kind of stage of the economy right now. So, just a quick background. I was fortunate to work at, out of college in production, right, residential, production homes, because kind of get my feet wet. So that was good from just like a scheduling and organizational standpoint. But I was only there a year because I want to get in custom. I was fortunate to be hired at a company that was building the Omni Monte Lucia in Paradise Valley. And for those that know that area, Lincoln and Tatum, there's a $350 million hotel resort there. It used to be La Posada, now it's Omni. And a lot of celebrities, President Obama stayed there, President Trump stayed there. It's a very amazing property. And what's neat about it is there's 34 custom homes on the property, and then you also have the commercial side. So you have some residences there. So just from an experience side, like, it was really great to get that commercial experience, especially working on a very complicated project with FF&E, right? As you're dealing with, a hotel moving in and taking occupancy of the property, and then the residences, right, that are living there full time. And so I had good experience. So when I started my company, having lived through the recession, because this was 2008, 9 that I was working at the hotel, it was really slim pickings in Arizona. I mean, it was really tough. And I saw the company that I worked for, you kind of have their struggles. So when I started my company, I'm like, I'm going to do both, because you still have to specialize as a small business owner, but you can still specialize and be versatile, right, in different fields. And so that was the whole intent. But what's interesting, when I first started the company, it was definitely more heavy commercial than residential. But that pivot, that pendulum changes a little bit. Especially now, I've been a little bit more reluctant, especially now in 2022, to take on as many commercial projects. The reason being is, in the commercial world, it's very important to get that project open, whether it's a restaurant, a hotel, a business. They're only making money if it's open. And with supply chain and labor constraints and everything we're dealing with, it's very complex. And it's not that I'm averse to liquidated damages or having that in the contract. It's just I understand the complexity behind it right now. Whereas the residential side is flourishing, right? And so we've kind of pivoted, and we have some amazing projects happening in town and some great clients. And so it's not that we still don't have that same deadline from our client, but it's a little bit more amicable, if you will, understanding the current climate that's out there.
But what a different sales process between commercial and residential. I mean, the way businesses buy versus selling to, a couple who want to buy, that's got to be completely different.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Gary, because I mean, you think about the complexity of understanding your operation. I mean, that whole emotional roller coaster that the clients go through is totally different, and the planning process and really understanding that, no kidding aside, I mean, when you're working with a client that's spending this kind of money on a custom home, it's not that it's hand holding, but there has to be a very dialed in approach, right, of that communication process, because it's very emotional and there's a lot of dollars vested. It's a little bit different than the business owner that, hey, time's money. I need to get this open. And it's not that you're sacrificing quality, but the reality is they're not going to spend 60 grand on a powder bathroom. They're going to be, optimizing that investment. And so you have to massage that relationship very different, not just from the trade partners and vendors we're using, but also from the client perspective.
Yeah, I love your logo, or your little saying on there: saving marriages one house at a time.
Yeah.
You got to have some good stories about building for some couples.
Oh my goodness. I don't know where to start or what I can share on that. But yeah, it's a very emotional process. And what's amazing is I've used that tagline. I had some clients that we did an interview. It was really cool. We did an interview it's on my website. You probably saw that. And in the video, the wife said, Brad, saving marriages one house at a time. And so we've used that in our marketing, of course. But the reality is there's some truth to that. It's, to be a really successful builder in construction, you have to understand just the psychology behind that emotional process. Because think about, I mean, my process, our building projects are typically a year to year and a half in design, and then 2 years of construction. I mean, this is a 3.5 year commitment for our clients. So to have them engaged and to help to be a good steward of their investment in their project, and just to communicate, it's really difficult. And it can, by not setting clear expectations, that can move very quickly and really create some strife for both parties.
Yeah, well, and on top of that, the reality is 99.9% of the clients that you have, this is the largest purchase that they will ever make.
Right.
Ever.
Yep. And it is. And some of it, I mean, even if they're, we have some amazing clients, and whether it's their primary residence or a secondary one, a lot of times our clients are coming from the Midwest, and they may have a pretty, by industry standards are, pretty standard or mid-size home there in the Midwest. But this is kind of their joy. They've saved, they've worked, they've invested, and now they're building their vacation home. And it is nice. It's typically much nicer than the primary residence back in the Midwest. And so to that point, I mean, it is not a small amount that they're investing, and they have to make sure that we're good stewards and at least very conscious of every dollar that goes into that project.
Yeah. So here's the thing. This isn't going to shock you. The construction industry is known for being extremely poor at customer service, extremely poor, really pretty much across the board. Everything, scheduling, communication, anything you can think of. So what do you guys do that's different than most of your competitors to set yourself apart to where people are doing video testimonials that say Brad is saving, marriages one house at a time?
I love that you brought that up, Austin. I feel when I started my company, I mean, it's low hanging fruit. There, for whatever reason, as contractors, and I'll just speak to it before getting on the client perspective, but just as an industry, when I came in, I realized it's very cold. Contractors don't want to collaborate. They don't want to share how they price. Their systems, like it's just this really, I don't want to say prehistoric, but just this approach that's like today in business, especially a small business owner, for you to be successful, Austin, or you, Gary, or myself, like we have to collaborate. I'd rather learn from people that are doing the same sort of business all throughout the country. And social media has really helped bring that together. So I feel that there's a lot of processes there that I've gained just in our network, right? Through social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, and then some of the conferences. But as you get to the client specifically, in relation to that communication side, it's low hanging fruit. There's a couple things I had, calling a client back, being receptive, answering them. And even if you don't have the answer, I have clients that call me and text me, hey, I don't know, I'll get back to you right away. I mean, just knowing that you're on the other side of the phone and they can relate to you is a huge part. And then something that's really similar is, I had a client that at the end said, hey, Brad, a little recommendation for you is keep the site clean, right? Because, there, it was a really well managed and the communication was great, but there was just some debris. There was some sawdust in my driveway. And this was a remodel we did in Phoenix at the time. And there's good feedback where I'm like, okay, well, there's again low hanging fruit. And so fast forward, we had this amazing custom home we're building. And, after the framing process, we had this big roller magnet. And so I sent one of my assistant superintendents and he's roller magnet, using the roller magnet around the house and he's picking up all the nails. And then we showed the video of him walking around doing that. And then we showed the bucket of collection of like nails and screws. And the amount of like, it went viral because the amount of feedback, that's a pain point for our customer.
Mhm.
And they said, Brad, do you realize that when we moved in our home, like our kids stepped in a nail because, they didn't pick it up and it was in the dirt or in the landscape. And so it's these little things where you realize it clicks. Like, contractors aren't calling back. So I already have a step up because I'm going to answer my phone. I'm always going to be available. I'm available through my social media channels. And being that half of our clients are out of state, that was a big thing. They said, Brad, like when we call you and we're interviewing, you're always responsible. You're always getting back to us. And it's really not very difficult when you have the right people and systems in place. And then it just is a leg up because for whatever reason, our industry is really struggling with that. And even more so today.
So I'm really curious. Most of the world right now is really struggling with worker shortage. I mean, we just don't have enough labor to go around. Is that hitting the construction industry the same as others, and how you dealing with that?
Another great question, and yeah, it's industry wide, whether it's in the restaurant industry or travel or hospitality, as well as construction, and it's really bad in construction. We've had some movements like Keep Craft Alive nationally, which is helping youth especially understand that you can have a wonderful career in the trades, right? Whether it's plumbing, electrical, trim, carpentry, or even own a general contracting business. And there's this methodology mentality that everyone has to go to college. You have to get a 4-year degree, and then that's your entry into some business. Well, that's great for some people, and it's great for some occupations, but it's not great for everyone. So we've had this movement, and then now it's been exacerbated by the economy. Like we're dealing with supply chain and everything that's going on. And so now, to your point, Gary, is that well, how do we leverage that? And I'll just speak to some of the strategies we have that I'm open to share. Is that people don't realize how much of a connector social media is. And so LinkedIn, what I found is especially the younger generation, there's this gap here of, there's plumbers that are in their 50s and 60s that are leaving the industry, but there is a wave of younger ones that are seeing the opportunity there and coming in. And the young ones understand and they gravitate towards social media. So by us being active on those platforms, we're like my garage door company, Dan, he's a super young guy and he owns his own business doing all my garage doors. And so we're finding amazing talent pool that's helping us bridge that gap that otherwise I don't know how I'd find them because whether you're trying to go, we don't have Yellow Book anymore, which most of I grew up with, but you're going through some sort of search engine on Google or Rolodex to try to, but social media, I can, hey, talk to certain builders that I respect, that trust me, and say, hey, Brad, I can't keep this person busy myself. They're great. You use them as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think so. Something that you hit that's really important is social media, right? For the younger generation that are growing up in, junior high, high school, and they're deciding what they want to do. So two things I want to hit on. Social media is huge for them. They're spending a bunch of time on there. And so if you're trying to get people into your business or into your industry, you have to be on there. And second is this belief that you have to go to a 4-year college, you have to get a 4-year degree. If you want to be successful in this world, you need to do that, right? And so first I'm going to ask you a question. Do you know Josh Zolan?
I don't.
Okay, so Josh Zolan's here local. He's going to be on our show again in a few weeks, but he was our very first guest on this podcast. And he wrote a book called Blue is the New White. And he's all over social media, and it's pushing that exactly, saying there's another way to make very, very good money and take pride in your work and do something that you enjoy rather than feeling like you've got to go to college, potentially for most people going into quite a bit of debt to then come out on the other side and potentially not even work in that same area anyway. Right. And so I need to introduce you to him. He'd be a great guest for your podcast, by the way. We didn't even mention that you have your own podcast. And so you guys should get to know each other, but that's his whole mission, right? And he's building a great company too. They do restaurant equipment repair and service and sales and all that kind of stuff as well. And so he's definitely in the blue collar industry, and they're building this business that's growing and doing great. But he really sees himself more as somebody who's pushing the trades as an alternative, and that kids need to know that there is an alternative to college and that there's other ways to make a great living and contribute in this world.
What I love about that is that, I mean, again, and I grew up in this industry where it's like, you got to go to college, right? You have to go to college. You need a 4-year degree. I was fortunate to do that. That's not for everybody, but the reality is, even with college, like, not everybody is fit to be in an office or a desk or maybe a lawyer, doctor, whatever it may be, in the blue, new, white, right? Blue collar to white collar.
Yep.
I would assume that's the intent there, is that the blue collar, you can find a lot of success, and where it was frowned upon. I had people tell me, Brad, you're really going to like college for construction? Like, what are you doing? It doesn't make any sense. And so there's this mentality, but that's changed. And this is what I love about social media is two things, is not only can you build a network, right? In a lot of ways, lead generation, collaboration, vendor support. I mean, we can dive down that channel. I could talk about that for hours, but the reality is, with social media, is now I can show at AFT, right? A Finer Touch Construction, here's the projects we're working on. Here's, what I love about it is now with the video content, which is really valuable for any business, is I can show video, not just drone footage, but I'm talking about actual video of the projects, and here's the thought behind it, and here's how we're doing this process. And it really gauges interest. Like, I have a lot of people reach out like, I want to do that. And so you're creating this interest where people realize this is really cool. And like Elon Musk says, we need engineers, we need builders, we need people doing things like, and there's so much satisfaction for me at the end of the day. I've worked in an office, I've been out in the field, to be able to go in the field and see a project and drive by it. Like, now I tell people I worked at the Omni, and be able to go back and say, I worked on that project, and see people living there. I've stayed there. I'm fortunate to be hosting. I'm part of a builder group, a mastermind group, and I'm hosting here in Scottsdale next March. And so I get to bring 20 of these executive builders all around the country, building these amazing markets, from Park City, to Orlando, to upstate New York, to, Los Angeles. And they're all coming here to Phoenix, and we're staying at the Mauna Lucia. And so now they get to see, and there's joy in that, right? To go to restaurants that I built. And so to that point is that there's, social media has now bridged that people say, I can make money and I don't just have to go to a 4-year degree. And to your point, Austin, debt's real. Like, the cost of college now is completely absurd. And it's really hard. COVID really affected a lot of things with online education. A lot of us don't do well learning online through Zoom. It's just not as effective for most of us. And so the hands-on side, there's ton of opportunity. Reach out, come into the trades, and the world's wide open for that.
Yeah.
I come at it always from I'm a sales guy, so we're always helping companies with sales and sales process and whatnot. And it's changed a ton over the last 5 to 10 years. And I think about your industry, and a lot of it was, you go to the home shows, you network with general contractors, you do all that, which a lot of that stuff is still in place today. But how has it changed for you in the way that people buy or how you leverage things like social media and whatnot? How has your sales process changed?
Oh, that's a really good question and perspective, Gary. And this is, fortunately for me, and I'll just give a little background. When I started social media, I'm a fairly young guy. I start my company. It's very competitive in the market. We're just coming out of a recession. This is 2013. And I'm competing against some very well-established brands. And the reality is, and I'll just speak to like the business development lead generation side, is there were some top tier architects, designers that I wanted to work with in town, some engineers. I'd call them, traditional way you call them and reach out via email, and they never return my call. They never return my email. That's just part of it because I'm like nothing to them. I don't, I have no credibility. So the backdoor approach was, well, let's start posting what I do. Here's my thought process. Here's our quality. Here's our execution. Here's our site cleanliness. Here's these pain points that we're hitting. And now it sparks something. Now these same architects that never return my call. They're like, hey, Brad, can we meet for dinner? Can you talk to me about your social media strategy? Can you help me with ours? So now I'm providing value to them. Yeah, absolutely. Here's what I'm doing. It's not algorithm techniques. It's just here's some processes. Here's how to gauge this audience. Here's how to speak to them on these different demographics and platforms. Where now I'm providing value, and they're like, okay, Brad, we're going to work together. We want your network exposed with our product, and our design. And so now I'm working with these same architects who wouldn't return my call. I'm working with them now. And that's straight because of LinkedIn, right? And so now the customer side, as you mentioned, whether you're marketing in print magazines, and which is very costly, or your tenant build shows, as you mentioned, Gary, well, it's different now. I can post stuff on Instagram and create silent salesmen. And really what that is are people that sell your brand that aren't on your payroll. So now I have all these people that are advocates of the AFT brand saying, hire Brad, come to Scottsdale, this is who you need to hire. And now who would have thought that you're building $5, $6, $7 million homes from Instagram? That these people follow you on Instagram, they've been following you for 2 years, and you could build this culture and this personality behind it. And same as LinkedIn. So leads from LinkedIn and Instagram, where the phone's now ringing and people want to work for, have us work for them because they've been following us and they feel like they know us and we're a known entity to them.
You said something in there very subtle, but it's a really important lesson for anybody in any industry. Is when you are trying to break in and you're trying to go to all these architects and these people, they had partners, they had people they were working with already. And that's the status quo. And one of the hardest things to sell against is the status quo. But what you did that was really nuanced was, I always call it, you sold the problem. You sold the things that maybe they weren't satisfied with their current partners. You sold them the problems you were solving. When they listened to that, that's when they wanted to work with you, which it's a really subtle lesson in there. But that if you're breaking into any new market or new company, you're trying to grow after anything, you got to sell that problem first. It sounds like you did a wonderful job doing that.
Well, to speak on that, Gary, what's interesting, I'll look at it from my perspective too. So I'm always a big proponent of never be super soliciting, super salesy in your social media, right? Don't be out there saying, this is what I do, call me, here's my number. Like it's a total turnoff. Going to LinkedIn, what's amazing about LinkedIn is you can actually post your content, and then anyone that likes and comments, their whole network sees it. So you can build this really organic network very quickly through Instagram or through LinkedIn. But what's amazing is that from my side, there are people that will connect with me on LinkedIn and then 2 seconds later sending me a DM. Hey, Brad, hire me. I got this product I'm selling you. I mean, I get thousands of these. It's unbelievable. However, to your point, Gary, like the salespeople that for 6 months are following my content, they're liking my posts, they're engaging, they're commenting. Hey, this is really interesting. I like that you do this. I mean, whatever it may be, I'm seeing that. Like they may not think that, but I'm watching this stuff. Now they've built essentially a little friendship, even though it's may be through social media. Now, when they come at me and say, hey, Brad, I think I might have something that you may want to look at or new technology, new product, I'm listening because it's not just this very cold. And it's the same thing with the architect that to your point, Gary, it's this value that they may have had their network, but there were pain points or they saw the writing on the wall or they saw the marketing or they saw the industry changing. Well, how can we pivot, right? As a company, we have to learn how to pivot our brands, right? We can't be comfortable where we are. So
Yeah, we've got to be comfortable pivoting our brands. And also, the worst thing that any business owner could ever say is that's not the way we do things. Right. Like, well, okay, but let's consider it. Let's look at things a little bit differently. So I want to dig into that a little bit, but let's take a quick break. We're going to have a quick call to action for our listeners, and then we'll come back and unpack a little bit more about finer touch construction. Hey there, Tycoons. Austin Peterson here, co-host of Tycoons of Small Biz. If you think you have what it takes to be considered a tycoon and you're wondering how you could become a featured guest, please follow and then message us at Tycoons of Small Biz on LinkedIn. We'd love to have a conversation with you to see if it is a mutually good fit, and if so, we'll get you scheduled for an interview. If you're unsure about being a guest on our podcast, but are contemplating selling your business over the next few years and you'd like to know what your business is worth, please also follow us and then message us on LinkedIn for your no obligation, informal valuation of your business. We look forward to hearing from you, and thanks for listening to the Tycoons of Small Biz podcast. And now, back to today's program. All right, welcome back, Tycoons. Austin Peterson here with Brad Leavitt and Gary Braun. We're talking about the construction industry, and if you're tuning in and you're in the construction industry or you're not, and you thought we were just going to be talking about building homes and framing and plumbing and electrical work, that's really not what we're talking about. We're talking about kind of what's going on in the construction industry today, where it is today compared to where it was, and kind of where we're going from here. And so right before the break, we were talking about LinkedIn and the way that you use LinkedIn and Instagram and the way that it's built your brand. But it also kind of leads to, what does the future hold, right? And so let me kind of frame this for you. So we talked a little bit towards the beginning about how the construction industry is very inefficient. It's known as being so, and it's also known for very poor customer service. And I'll just speak for myself. I've experienced this multiple times over the last year. We've done quite a bit of a remodel in our house personally. And I had somebody this week, and it's a good company here locally. They're pretty well known. They're on the Inc. 5000 list. They're growing, like it's a good painting company. They walked in. The estimator walked in, very nice, very professional looking. Everything's great. I walk him around the house to show him what it is that I need done, and he's taking a few notes, but he never measured anything, not one thing, right? And so I'm showing him, I need these doors, I need these cabinets repainted, I need the walls and the baseboards here. And I mean, I walked him through, quite a bit of a project, but never once did he take measurements, not even, a tape measure, let alone an electrical, whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, how in the world are you estimating what this is going to cost? Right. And every consumer's thinking the same thing. They're known for just walking in, looking around and going, 10 grand. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And so what are you seeing today in terms of, new technologies that are coming into play, what you guys are doing different to professionalize, the construction industry?
That's a really good question there, Austin, especially how you teed that up. And so I look at it, the same thing, through social media, we can become aware of different products and softwares that are out there. And so what they call innovation, there's product out there, and how do we use it or optimize it? Construction's been slow. Hey, this is how I've done it, so this is how I'm going to continue to do it. And we're trying to change that. Like, okay, you may have done it this way, but what if there's a better method, a better process, a better product out there? And so that continuing education, this is why I'm really big on our, not just myself, but our team attending conferences, right? Attending different shows that are happening, right? To see the new product that's out there. And because we've been fortunate to build these relationships with a lot of these big suppliers, Kohler, Pella, Build-A-Trend, that's our online software, and Sub-Zero Wolf. I mean, we're aware of a lot of these new products that are coming to market, but to that point specifically, it's really getting the right people on board. And so we have a YouTube channel, and we just did some filming this morning before I came in, and we were showing Bluebeam. So Bluebeam is a software that most residential builders are probably not using, most commercial guys are using. And we can layer and we can document things. And so what ends up happening is, especially in the residential world, is a lot of times we have a construction set of drawings. And yes, everything looks great on paper. You go to build it, and well, you really can't build towards that, because design doesn't work as you go from 2D to 3D. And there's some logistics, and so things get changed, and the as-built aren't done like in commercial because it's not as regulated. And you may change the pool location, or retainage basin of where the wiffle ball field is in the back, and well, that's not communicated to the civil guy, and so these balls get dropped. And so what we try to do, okay, well, how do we fix that? Bluebeam is now where my field personnel can actually update the software. They can update pinpoints and elevations, and everything we're changing, we can get that to the right parties, the landscape architect, and we can get it to our civil engineer, and they can make those updates. Now we have a current set of drawings that are correct. Estimating is no different, right? Where we fail as contractors is we don't set clear expectations. It's really whimsical. It's just open-ended. You get your price when I get it. I don't really have any process. So whether you're a contractor or any small business owners, there's two things that employees need. One, and this is really, I stole this from Disney, so it's not like it's my information. But Disney, they're really slow to hire, quick to fire. Okay, but their whole methodology is that when their employees understand, they believe in the brand, so they believe in working at the Disney park, so that's part of it. They have to believe in the company, and then the second thing is they have to have a very clear understanding of their role. Like they have to have a clear understanding of what their job specifics are. So if people can come to work and they know what they have to do, their scope of work to be successful, and they believe in the company, like you've won, like you're going to win that company culture battle. Now, how that integrates into the company side is okay, well, we understand that aspect from the employee retention side. But now I have to have protocol as a company that when that first lead comes in, when Austin calls me and says, hey, Brad, I want to do a remodel or I want to do a new custom home, I have to document that same scope of work internally from that initial vetting phone call till completion, whatever that is. Where's that baton go? How's it handed? How does it go through my funnel, through all my personnel in my company? What's my role? And this is something that's taken me time as a business owner. Off air, I was asked just as we're prepping, and it took me 6-7 years of my company to really understand that aspect and to have the right people that create those systems, that create those SOP, those operating procedures. Now, when Austin calls, my personnel is trained, my sales team is trained that we go out there and we're not just looking around, taking some notes. Like we're very calculated on what needs to be done so that we can communicate the process, the timing, the schedule to when you're going to be done. And more importantly, what that cost will be.
Yeah.
I love that, and I'm a huge process guy. So the more you can have it documented and clear expectations, what everybody should be doing and everything. Documenting it's the easy part. Writing it down and saying what's everything. Getting people to actually do it is the harder part, and that a lot of that is the culture you create around accountability, about following up, about communication and whatnot. And I gotta say, Brad, you don't sound like a lot of the construction guys I've talked to. It sounds like you have done a great job of building culture. So talk a little bit about the culture at your company and what you did to kind of drive that culture.
Yeah, another good question. Again, it takes time, right? I think fortunately haven't been in the industry and worked for other companies, before starting my own. It gave me some good experience of my managers did this I really liked, they did this I didn't like so much, right?
Yeah.
How I was treated. So okay, how can I change that as a business owner? But now when you get into the accountability side, how do we create a culture where people look, the reality is construction is an extremely difficult business. It's very hard to manage people. It's hard to manage unreliable trade partners and suppliers at times, right? That aren't good communicators and calling us back even. And so, and at times clients can be tough. And sometimes it's because we haven't set clear expectations. Sometimes it's because our processes aren't dialed in. And sometimes the client's unrealistic. And whatever that may be, there's a lot of times a little bit of both. And so what I've tried to do is, okay, what's the outlet? How can we make our employees where they're dealing with this stress outside that? How can we soften that? Okay, we do lunch every day as a company. We, depending on what part of town and where, we collaborate a lot as a team. We have group text chains. We go out and we have group text. We have group activities. We're going out and we're doing the go-kart racing. Something that's kind of fun is this Friday. If you're following us on social media, I'm taking them to get pedicures, right? All my male and female staff, we're taking over the nail salon. We're all getting like pedicures. And so it's these little things where we have these bonding moments. And so we have a lot of fun outside of work. We have a lot of fun in work. And then I think what's really important is setting healthy boundaries with our clients that look, our team's working really hard. They're great communicators. They're always available, but they're not me. At the end of the day, like I'm available 24/7, but 5 p.m., 6 p.m., they're not going to respond to every text and email. They're going to have weekends off. They need that. They need to recharge that. And so by me setting that expectation with the client now, it's a little breath of fresh air for them. They can choose to respond if they want, but they have a little grace there, if you will. And so it's not just one thing. I think it's a lot of things, is bringing the right people on, setting those expectations. And then, hey, the reality is we do have a lot of fun, and we have a lot of funny memes and tech chains, and we just have a good time together. And so it's that constant daily, communication. And then more importantly, going back to social media, which I've seemed like I've been beating this whole time, is that the social media side, they get to see their projects take life. They get to see the excitement in the comments, right, from our network and clientele as they're commenting. And so it gives them life every day as they're maybe fighting the drag of that week of, I don't want to say lack of motivation, but just dealing with business. It's hard. And now they get to see their posts and see, just that edification of those comments.
Yeah. So you kind of, you glossed over this real quick, so I'm gonna push back a little bit, and that is the aspect of subcontractors, right? You guys work with other tradespeople that really are their own bosses. They own their own businesses. And so it's one thing to have that kind of culture and make sure that that happens inside of your business. But the hardest part, in my estimation, in being in the construction industry, and I grew up in the construction industry. My dad was a was a stucco contractor. I owned a painting company at one point, actually. But the hardest part is, as far as your client is concerned, it's you,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're bringing in these tradespeople to do the things that need to be done for at each stage of the job. But they hired a finer touch construction, and it's up to you to make sure you've got the proper people in there doing the job the right way, treating the job site and your clients the right way. So how do you extend that to your subcontracting partners as well?
It's so well stated, because the reality is, as a general contractor, like, I'm on the hook. Whether it's not my fault or not, I'm responsible at the end of the day. And so, going back to the employee side, and then I'll answer the subcontractor side. So the other thing we do is we meet as a company, a couple times a month, our production meetings, and we do have essentially like an audit. As we make mistakes, we're accountable, right? And we share that. And my team's very open to say, I made this mistake, and we're hoping no one else makes that. Now, how do we implement that? So in this meeting that we had, one of my project managers said, hey, in my commercial background that he worked extensively, and he said we do what's called pool plan, PULL, and it's really a methodology in scheduling where, when you're sequencing, just for a quick conversation here, if you're building a high rise or a vertical hotel, you have to sequence that. You can't just wait till one whole thing's done and then the next one comes in. Like, you have to stage people, because otherwise they'll never finish. So the pool plan is really very inclusive of the trade partners. They come in, they're involved in scheduling and manpower commitments. And so all the subcontractors sit in a room. So we're like, okay, why don't we take that same methodology and do it in residential, which no one's doing? So now I'm calling my owners of all my trade partners saying, hey, we're doing a pool plan meeting. And they're like, what's that? Well, come in and you'll see. So they come in, they sit down in the conference room, and I set the expectation. Hey, the reason you're here is that instead of me just building a schedule saying, Austin and Gary, you have to be there at this date, you're actually making commitments with each other and me.
Mm.
Actually, here's what's realistic that I can do. Here's what the duration is, but I can't finish this scope till this is done and this is done, especially on a hillside, very complicated lot. There's sequencing, right? So now my goal is to say, awesome, my goal of you being here, you're investing some time today, but this is going to make you and your company more profitable, because my schedule now was built by you and me, and it's collaborative. And now when I bring you out here, we're ready. That you're not wasting time in trip charges and multiple, phone calls, and my superintendent yelling at you because you're not here. And so if we can create this process where it's collaborative, now with these pool plans, what's amazing is feedback. I was just with our pool contractor, and he said he was in his mastermind group, and he said, what I love about working with AFT is now Brad does these pool plans. And so I know when he's ready. And it's allowed me as a business to stage my manpower, be more profitable. And then I know that AFT's on top of it. And so now it goes back to my reputation's only as good as my trade partners. But if I could create value for them through that scheduling and contracting process, then now they're vested and they're part of this. And they feel a little bit more accountable, at least what's been told to me, right, than my competitors. So
Well, if it's their idea, it's always a good idea. If it's their commitment, it's always a
yeah.
good commitment. So I love it. I love the way you talk about a lot of your business systems, a lot of the culture stuff that you've been doing. A lot of that you don't learn that out of a textbook at college. So how did you develop kind of your management system, your leadership style? Where did that come from?
Another great question. So fortunately, there's a mentor of mine, a builder, and what's funny is I was coming up through the building trades. None of the other builders wanted to help me out very much, being a young guy here. But there was one builder in particular, and I'll give him credit, Rod Collum. He's Collum Homes in Scottsdale. And he put his arm around me and he said, hey, Brad, like, I believe in what you're doing and really what you're trying to pursue here, and make some big changes, not just locally, but nationally in our industry. And he said, you need to get part of a Builder 20. And this goes to the event I'm hosting next fall. And so Builder 20, what it is, and this is really important because I know a lot of small business owners all around are in these similar mastermind groups. And what it is essentially there's 20 builders that are similar scope to me, that do similar volume, similar scope of work, and they build in non-compete areas. So they build in all regions of the country, and we meet twice a year. And the whole point is twice a year for 3 days, and we sign NDAs, and it's a full audit. So I'm sharing all my financials, like everything, what I'm making, what I'm charging, all my processes, what I'm paying each employee, what my burden rate is. I mean, just, what I'm paying on cell phone bills. And then Here's my scheduling. And really what ends up happening is twice a year, I meet with these builders at their location, and you're standing around 20 builders that are looking at you saying, Brad, you're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong. You need to fix this. You need to fix this. In fact, going back to the operating procedure, my first meeting, there was a builder. He's in his late 60s. He's been building for 40 years. He's at his company. He said, Brad, I'm going to send you this SOP manual I've built for 40 years, 185 pages of like documents. Just sends it to me. And I'm like, do you know how much this would cost me and how much time it'd take, being this younger guy? So I'm like, okay, I can help you guys with marketing and video content and like the social media strategies. And then you help me in the business side. So to that point, it's just being very active of, in all these conferences and thought leadership and any opportunity I can to increase that education. And it's not just, one thing I think a lot of us make the mistake is just networking in an industry. But what I found is as I network outside of my industry, there's a lot of businesses that are doing really smart things and have different processes and cultures. How can I implement that and really just kind of cherry pick? This is a good idea. That's a great system. That's a good idea. Now let's implement that here at AFT.
Yeah, I think so. Now you're speaking my language. I'm a huge proponent of mastermind groups, and you actually made a point that I was just about to make, and that's the fact that too many people get in their own industry mastermind groups and they don't participate in other groups outside of their industry, right? Because if you do that, you don't know what you don't know, right? There are other people in, Larry, Gary and I are both in what I would call the knowledge for profit industry, right? We get paid for our knowledge and our expertise, and we provide advice. That's literally what we do. Our perspective on things is going to be different than yours because we don't build anything. I mean, literally, I can't take my family and say, I built this restaurant, right?
Right.
Or we're staying in a hotel that dad built. But my perspectives are different. And on top of that, I work with multiple construction companies in my business. I work with multiple companies in other industries. And so I'm getting that perspective that I then bring to that mastermind group. And so I think it's just so key. Every business owner, regardless of which one you choose, and there are a bunch of them out there, you need to participate in mastermind groups because there truly are the only people in those mastermind groups, or excuse me, the people in those mastermind groups are the only people who truly understand what it is that you're going through as a business owner. Your spouse doesn't truly understand it. Your employees don't truly understand it. And you have an opportunity to be 100% vulnerable, 100% open, and get feedback that's completely unbiased from other members of your mastermind group.
I couldn't agree with that more, Austin. And I just remember when I got in one of my groups, I'm sitting there, I'm walking in there, and we're sales consulting, right? And I walk in there and there's somebody who does school buses. They bring children to school. And go, what am I going to learn from that person? And then I'm looking, and there's somebody in construction, they do drywall and paint. And then there's somebody who does security. I'm like, they know nothing about my business. And how are they possibly going to help me? But that's not the stuff that comes up. It's leadership issues, it's conflict, it's shortages, it's what do I do? And those are all common among whatever business you have. So I'm a big believer too. These mastermind groups or peer groups or whatever, they are just invaluable in what they can provide you to help you mature as a leader.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, Gary, I mean, even not only networking with what you and Austin said with other masterminds in our communities and learning from them, even not just supply chain and sales and all these different aspects, but even marketing. I'll give a little example here. I mean, one of my clients, in fact, the one who said, saving marriages one house at a time, he's like one of the top cosmetic dentists in the country. Like he trains dentists all over the world how to do cosmetic dentistry. And he's really created a niche, and he's worked for a lot of professional athletes that fly in from all over the country. And what he's done, I didn't know what an emotional journey was. And he said, Brad, like from a marketing side, you have to create an emotional journey. Like this is what connects you, why people want to hire you and come to you. And what he does, it's genius. Like in his office, he has this plaque that says building confidence, right? That's what is building confidence. And then he shows that emotional journey. He shows a lady that would never smile at a wedding or a birthday because she was really self-conscious about her smile. And then she's buying her plane ticket. She's flying there. She's taking a selfie there in front of building confidence. She has a procedure done, gets her veneers on. And now here she is at her wedding or, this special event. There's a huge smile. And so it connects people like, well, I want that. Like, I want to be happy. I want, this is solving my insecurity here. And so it just connects with you the way he markets that. And I'm like, well, that's brilliant, right? What same thing from my side. Well, how can I be a thought leader in construction? Like it's a suck industry. I just it really is. We're bad at communicating and all the stuff that we've been talking about. So if I can show, hey, here's how you communicate. Here's the systems. Here's like how we keep the site clean. And people know you care. Now it's like now we're vetting the ideal client, which is marketing 101, right? Understand your ideal client, how to market to them. And then now you've really connected. So
Yeah, it makes me think of the phrase, facts tell, stories sell, right? And that's the reality is no matter what industry it is that you're in, people buy on emotion. They want to know the information, right? I mean, I'm a numbers guy, and so I'm sharing information about the numbers and what we're going to accomplish and so forth, but they don't really care about that. What they care about is what you're talking about and wanting to put in place. Is that going to get me to my goals and my dreams,
Yep.
right? For you, is it going to be the house of my dreams? Do I envision myself sitting there with all of my kids and grandkids having a big meal together because Brad built me the best dining room that I could ever imagine having? Dining room, kitchen combo, whatever, right? That's what they're envisioning, and you've got to be able to convey that story to them. Gary's got to do the exact same thing in everything that he does. And so that's one of those that's it's literally industry agnostic. Every single person out there, no matter what you do for a living, should be conveying emotion to the customers that you're trying to bring on.
completely spot on. I mean, that's the thing, as you mentioned. I mean, the dining room's a great example. Like, I want to, holidays, I want to gather with my family and my children and, whoever maybe, especially with COVID, like we saw how COVID just changed everything. And people are looking now being stuck at home or like limited communication with people. Well, how do I change this? And that's why, we see so many remodels and new construction. But the reality is if you're showcasing that, then they're going to come find you because you're connected to them emotionally.
Yeah. And the other thing I have to just kind of reiterate that you said earlier is on social media, sell a whole heck of a lot less. Educate or provide an experience, but don't try to sell yourself on social media. It's actually going to work against you.
I love that you said that because again, that's my biggest turnoff. In any industry, but no matter the industry, look, the reality is I don't do a lot of mechanics, right, of cars, but there's people that I watch on social media because they're like teaching me how to do it. I'm like, oh, that's super interesting. I never
Mhm.
thought I'd find that interesting, but now I'm watching that. And same thing, like to me, the nuance of construction, the day to day of building is just something we do and we understand it. But my clients don't, the public doesn't. And so if I can educate them or say, this is how you do this, here's the thought behind it, you're and not only are you creating these silent cells when we talked about this network, but it's great for the algorithm too because people are watching. They want to
Yeah.
watch, and it just helps build that reach.
Yeah, no doubt. They want to know that you're a person, right? Not just a business owner. They want to see who you are, and then they just they just want to watch. You got to bring them in, and the moment you start selling somebody, most people just turn it
It's a
off.
total turn off. And to that point, Austin, it's a really good point because I've just given a little bit about my Instagram strategy is that, from Instagram, Monday through Friday is very professional. It's like our projects, our Instagram reels, our video content, just everything here we do is building. Well, I can have fun now on the weekends because I'm with my family, my kids, my daughter's graduating. So now I can post the emotional side, like the family side, so that people connect. They're like, well, he's a real person. I mean, we see the building side throughout the week, but then the family side. And so now, all of us have some sense of privacy we want, and we don't have to put anything out there, but there's a lot we can put out there that really will connect people that, hey, this is someone that I'm connecting with that I want to work with or have worked for me.
Yeah,
I got to say, coming into this conversation, talking to somebody who has a construction business, I really didn't think I'd be hearing about algorithms and Instagram and buyer journeys and whatnot. I love all the stuff that you're doing. This is awesome stuff.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks, Gary.
anything you want to add at the end, Gary? Any last minute hard hitting questions as we close it out?
I'm kind of curious where you're going. You built an awesome business. You are very differentiated in your approach. I love the marketing things you're going. So what's the ultimate thing? I mean, do you want to be a big national company? Are you cool where you're at? What's the growth strategy here?
That's a really good question. So we do have plans to expand in the future, but more importantly, I mean, we have our brand and culture here. But I think the thought leader aspect I really love. I love teaching. I love it, guiding the students. So actually, we just started what we call the Contractor Coalition Summit. So this is pretty neat. So we had our first event in Nashville. We had a lot of people reach out. Hey, Brad, can I shadow you? And we all know how that is. Like we only have so much time. Like, so why can't we do a 3-day conference? Just everything I've learned in 20 years pricing, contracts, client expectations, marketing, all this. Here you go. We're going to just hammer you with this information. So we had this event in Nashville, sold out, had an amazing, just everyone in the first 40 minutes is like, Brad, we got our money's worth. And now in November, we're doing our second one in Huntington Beach. And so the continual education in our industry, which is much needed, is where I want to go. And so it'll never take away from what I'm doing at AFT and running our company, but it's just another avenue there to help build the industry as a whole nationally.
That's awesome.
All right. So last opportunity for you, Brad. Just tell our listeners how to get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more.
Yeah. So podcast you mentioned. So if you just go to any podcast platform, my podcast is the AFT Construction Podcast, and very similar, it's really driven to entrepreneurs, not just construction. And then all my social media channels are AFT Construction, stands for a finer touch. So Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn, AFT Construction, pretty simple. LinkedIn, probably the best way is Brad Leavitt. They'll find me on LinkedIn. And then our website is aftconstruction.com, and on YouTube for all of our video content, AFT Construction.
Awesome. Really appreciated the conversation. Thanks for coming in and spending some time with Gary and I.
Loved it. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Tycoons of Small Biz, proudly hosted by Austin Peterson and Landon Mance. Austin and Landon are comprehensive financial planning professionals specializing in financial, estate, and succession planning for small business owners. Austin and Landon have offices in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Las Vegas, Nevada, and represent clients in 14 states throughout the country. Join Austin, Landon, and the featured Tycoons live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. right here on Business Radio X and your favorite podcast platform.